Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We do hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us here as we provide to you, one of our biggest shows we're going to do across the summer. If you're listening to the Last Word on Spurs for the first time and where have you been, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And joining us on this Last Word on Spurs, you know these familiar faces. You see them every week, plus a very, very special guest. We're joined by the wonderful, crazy train instructor, conductor, the runner. Mr. Lee McQueen is in the house. Joining Lee, we're joined by Mr. Richard Cracknell, back in the UK for a limited time only. Joining Lee and Crackers are joined by the wonderful Ricky J. Norwood. I'm sure he's going to fill us with a lot to do with Tottenham Hotspur this evening. And we're also joined by Jason McGovern. Man, you know what? I've been waiting years to bring Jason on with the likes of Danny Kelly to talk potentially about a transfer. I know Jason's already going to do a runner on me. So where this show's going to go, only you guys will decide. We're delighted to welcome our special guest to Last Word on Spurs this evening, making his debut in a show that's been planned for the last 6 to 9 months. Completely my fault once again. We're joined by the wonderful Tottenham Hotspur's View from the Lane, award-winning twice a week, and talkSPORT's very own, the wonderful broadcaster, Danny Kelly joins us. Danny, loves having Last Word on Spurs. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And first of all, don't worry about the amount of time you and I have taken organising this. And just don't put us in charge of anything important, really. I want to thank everybody for getting on here. I know people said to me, but you do the View from the Lane. I'm sorry, I genuinely believe there's loads and loads of room for all kinds of different Spurs platforms and products, because they'll reflect the myriad ways in which fans out there actually follow the club. It's not all one mind hive. And so if the content is good, I think there's plenty of room for all of us. I also want to thank you for doing this on YouTube in visual, because if I think back to the television shows I used to do for Channel 4 back in the day, this is probably the biggest audience I've ever been in front of. So thank you very much indeed for that.
Can I be able to say, obviously, we're here for about an hour and a half. I can honestly tell you, I don't know where this show's going to go. So for better, for worse, you guys will probably decide where this show does go. But look, we're here discussing a lot to do with Tottenham Hotspur. There'll be some other, I'm sure, topics that come into debate. As Danny implored me and said, please, let's make sure we go a little bit off script. I can guarantee you, with these gentlemen you see on your screen here, we'll definitely be going off script on a number of times. And I suppose my job, as much as I can try and do it, is to steer us back on some form of an ordinary track. Although nothing is ordinary, as you guys know, supporting our beloved Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. So I think, do you know what, just to give a funny question to start with, because Danny's not held back on View from the Lane on this man. MJ Boy Hotspur says, Danny, to open up, how relieved is Danny to not watch Conte ball and to listen to a Conte press conference next season? Danny, an easy one to begin with for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually... I was coming in on such a long run up on the View from the Lane that I've actually pulled my hamstring as regards this question. I have to come on for a much shorter run up now. Look, the truth of this, I need to calm my skin down and not get so personal. I've become a personal enemy of a man I'd never met. Antonio Conte came to the club. I knew it was a terrible idea. And he went on then and, he did all the things I felt I knew he was going to do. He played very defensively, although, it worked for a few months at the end of the season before last. And I knew he didn't really want to be there. And I knew that he would belittle the club. And the more he did it and the more horrible it became, I did what I'm trying not to do, which is to get personally involved. Now, it didn't affect him one iota. He doesn't know who I am from Adam. But I was getting really quite worked up about Antonio Conte. So the answer to your questions, so I don't take all the time here, is I am very pleased not to have to watch that kind of football. Though who knows with Postecoglou what kind of football we're going to get? That's in the lap of the gods still. But also not to have him after the game being so miserable about the situation. I know, personal friends died. I know he was ill. That's all a given, and I on that level, I've got nothing but sympathy for him. But not to have him denigrating the club, its players, and eventually the supporters. It's our fault. We're too impatient. Give it a rest, man. You came here, told us you're one of the great managers in the world, and that is what you're producing. Nah, that didn't wash for me. I don't want to see him, as I suggested on one of my podcasts, fired out of a cannon into space. I think that's probably too much. But I'm very glad he's gone because, look, football clubs are a whole lot of things, but the manager sets the tone. I mean, the owner in Spurs' case, He's in the Bahamas. The number 2 doesn't speak. So the manager has to set the tone. If that tone is, this is a horrible place with useless players and you lot are too impatient. Now, he couldn't go quick enough for me. And of course, he should have gone. I went the second it was clear he wasn't going to sign a new contract.
Just over 1,000 of you watching this live already. Thank you so much for all of your incredible support for Last Word On Spurs. Cracks. An easy way to start, mate. I'll just hand over to you and let you take the reins.
Well, just to pick up on Danny's point there about him being fired into space, I would have loved to have seen that at last Superman, where the 3 baddies that come to Earth get put into that double glazing panel. And you could have had Conte, Jose Mourinho and Jacques Santini or Eric Dyer in there with them and shot into space just to flip eternally through the universe and gone. So let's hope that Postecoglou has his cape and pants on the outside of his trousers and acts like some Superman. So, yeah. Well, listen.
You got that, Richard, the Crackers. The Conte would have been in that space field going, I've been in better space vehicles than this. I've done better space exploration than this. I mean, shut up, man.
Well, evening and hello everyone, panel and everyone watching, and just a quick heads up, the name says Alma Shatar, I think they pronounce it, which is Arabic for crackers, because football's gone to Saudi Arabia. So I'm just letting Saudi Arabia know that I'm available for a highly inflated fee for when they start needing podcasts and YouTube channels for their football leagues. So come and get me, please, Rick.
I don't want to negotiate now. Blimey, bloody hell! I thought I'd an easy one towards the start of the season.
They pay 20 times more crackers over there as well, by all accounts.
Give me a break.
So you'll be getting 20 times more of what you're currently getting, which is nothing.
But listen, it's a great honour to be on with the great Danny Kelly. It really is. I mean, here's a man that, you know, in a world of TV and radio where there's formats and you have to sort of talk and speak and look a certain way, Danny and his esteemed friend Danny Baker have always pushed the envelope, always never been frightened to have a go at something a little bit quirky, a little bit off key, and you know, broadcasting so much the better for it. It really is. From Under the Moon, which was just complete and utter chaos back in the day, but brilliant. And Baker and Kelly on the BBC and then talkSPORT, always been innovative, and a little pinch of the old where you'd get talks of bands and vinyl. Don't worry, Danny. I know Ricky's got a script. I've torn it up because I'll be throwing in all the band talk and music talking.
I'm glad you're doing this now, Crackers.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. But the upshot of it is I have 2 massive collections now because of the way I've done the broadcasting over the years. I've got a massive collection of records, as you mentioned, and I've got a massive collection of P45s as well to show for my efforts at making different kinds of radio and television. I mean, they never give you a P45 anymore, whatever the modern equivalent is. They just say, we want to try something new. By which they mean, and they go, we want to try something that isn't crap, Danny. Oh, that's okay.
Ricky, all I can say is...
They always ask you back 6 months later. It's very odd. It's very odd.
You're lucky, Danny. Ricky, Mr. Levy hasn't been your boss. You'd have had a few more P45s.
Well,
he hands them out.
I've said this before, so I don't think he'll sue your esteemed podcast and video thing. I've had one interaction with Daniel Levy, and I think it's very, very telling. I didn't go to the actual meeting. When I was setting up Football 365, I guess the first sort of British internet football thing, we needed a lot of money because it was going to be expensive to do. And the chap, one of the 3 chaps who set it up with me, went to Daniel's office in Park Lane because he had some connection with him, and told him all about this newfangled thing, the internet, how big this thing was going to be, and that he needed, I don't know, I think it might have been £1 million, you know, a lot of money back in the day. When £1 million, you could go and see a West End show and get a fish and chip supper afterwards, you know. And Daniel Levy blanked him, told him, no way, I don't understand this is stupid, this is ridiculous, and all the rest of it. And there's a point I'm coming to here, I promise you, to do with the football. And my mate left with Daniel, with the print of Daniel's boot on the backside of his trousers. We actually got the money from the Bloom family, who run Brighton these days. The Bloom family, not the current incumbent, but his dad, made 14 times his money back, 1-4, within 18 months. And which is proving to be the better business model of people that run Brighton, or our friend Daniel Levy? I'm just saying that that's from a quarter of a century ago, that the Blooms made 14 times the money they put into 365 when that was a goer.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I don't know what we're talking about now.
but you'd have had a nicer office with a nicer coffee set if Daniel had done it.
Look, people want us to get stuck into him. I mean, this is the thing that's going to be. We're going to ask questions, and Richard hasn't even asked a question yet, but we're going to be asking questions about Spurs' transfer policy and all the rest of it. And there's a million things Spurs got to do in this summer. But the biggest thing is going to be trying to make the club united again. And because we have an issue now, don't we, where there are people who want Daniel Levy and ENIC out of the club under any circumstances, and I mean any circumstances. And then if you have and they're entitled to that view, but then so is everybody else entitled to their view. And I'm not going to have it. As some responders on social media, when I said I was coming on here, he's a Daniel Levy apologist. No, just because you don't want necessarily to burn the building down today doesn't make you an apologist. Also, I will choose to support the club in whatever way I choose to support it. And the problem is, and I get it, I totally get it. Any of you, and I'm looking at all of you now, you look like you've all been happily in good relationships since you were teenagers. But anybody who's ever been in a relationship that's failed, right? There comes a moment where one of the two parties sat over the dinner has decided that this is enough. I don't like this anymore. And the thing is, you never go back from there. No one has ever fallen back in love with somebody. And I think for a lot of people, and I totally understand their position, Daniel Levy has now had his time. It's over. ENIC out, etc. Orange, purple, whatever the colour, yellow and purple, whatever the colours are. And the problem with that is now that and I'm saying they because I'm not one of them as yet, they will be looking at every transfer that Spurs do, every player they bring in, every performance as proof of their side of the argument. And so you'll get we will have a lot of bad feeling in the stadium between groups of supporters. And I really want to try and avoid that myself because I don't see how that's the way forward. And I suppose the lesson here, the lesson of how this can work out comes from, and I hate to say this, down the road at Arsenal, who were in exactly the same position 2.5 years ago. People 100%. On the terraces, I know loads of Arsenal fans, I grew up with them, I'm married to one. They're on the terraces screaming at each other. Here we are, 2.5 years later, and they're, all but for the grace of God, they're champions of England, So
bang on.
Is against the background of that. That is the biggest job, that the combination of things that Levy has to do is has to restore, not faith in himself. You can't do that with people already given up. As I say, that love is gone. But within the Spurs fans, at least get a situation where we can all look forward to not the next season or the important thing we've got to do, even to the next match. Because I bet all of you, if you are honest, and I suppose you have been on this podcast, I know every Spurs fan has dreaded going to the home games in the last 6 months. There's no fun in it.
Danny, it's been a nightmare.
You can't be paying £80 a week to go to a fortnight to get yourself, a kick in and ask your backside kicked. It's not right. And that's what it's a huge undertaking. But of course, we saw at Arsenal, we've seen at Burnley, we've seen at clubs on the continent how quickly this thing can be turned around. If you have a manager who wants to be there and plays on the front foot, that solves so many problems so quickly. We'll see.
Absolutely. Lee, let's come over to you and we'll go to Ricks and let's steer us on track with relation to the show itself, Lee, if we can find a way to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say, I totally agree, actually, with what Danny was just saying there, because ultimately, football's such a weird thing, isn't it? It goes around in cycles. We had our cycle break after the Champions League final, and classic Tottenham, we didn't get a cycle break after winning something. We got a cycle break after not winning something, which is classic Spurs, isn't it, to be fair? And you look at Liverpool and their journey they're on, and they've been their cycles, and look at Spurs, and you got Arsenal's with that comparison. What's really funny and actually quite ironic is that Arsenal have basically copied the Poch model under Tottenham that they've now got, which has brought the whole club together. And I think Arteta even said it probably 2-3 days ago, that actually one of his biggest jobs was to come into the football club and bring everybody together, which is exactly what Danny was just saying. That's exactly what Ange Postecoglou, get in there, I've nailed that name, Postecoglou, that's what he's got to do. He's got to come in and do the same thing. And I have to say, regardless of leave out, in out, and all of the stuff, it has been absolutely taxing going to watch Tottenham Hotspur Football Club this year. Everyone knows that watches and listens regularly that I am a season ticket holder. I go to home and away when I can, but I go to all the home games. It's been absolutely abysmal trying to watch that football team. So, you can see that the fan base is broken and the team is broken and the manager has been broken and all them key things. So, in a kind of funny way, as to alluding to the point Danny said, that one of Postecoglou's first jobs is to bring everybody together. And in kind of funny way, that's actually not as hard as maybe what it seems, because it's so broken that actually you just got to come and put your arms around a few people, play that front foot football, get people on board. He seems to me like a character that doesn't take suffer fools gladly. And I think that, the players, where they had their little cliques in the squad, hopefully a lot of them will start to move on, and Postecoglou can get his own stamp. I think the key thing is, and Crackers has said it, I think we've all said it, but Crackers definitely said it a few times, is we've got to give this guy time. It's not going to happen on day one. Well, hopefully we'll smash Brentford and then we'll all think it will happen on day one. But it's not going to happen from day one, right? It's going to take a bit of time. So I suppose my question, Danny, your views is, what do you think the kind of two or three key things Postecoglou has to do when he walks into his job on July the 1st?
Well, you've already said the first one, Lee, and that is he has to, whatever stall he sets out, it has to have the ultimate short-term aim, not medium-term, not long-term. I don't believe in projects in football anymore. I'll explain why in a minute. That he has to have the short-term task of getting the club back together. As regards on the pitch, the first thing he has to do is he's lucky again here in that if you have a team that is struggling to score goals, that's really hard for the managers to deal with. Strikers are expensive. Opposition coaches are very good at stifling attacking patterns and all the rest of it. If you have a team who concedes tons of goals, as we've seen over and over again with firefighter managers in relegation battles, that is the easier thing to change. It is easier to set up 11 dustbins in the right position and force the opposition to play a certain way to get through them. So Spurs' 63 goals they conceded last season in the league. I mean, it is ridiculous. It is ludicrous for a team who were one penalty decision at Southampton away from going third, 2/3 of the way through the season. They end up conceding 63 goals. I think that's the first. So that's the second thing he's got to do, is sort out the defence. And by the defence, I don't mean Eric Dyer or whoever this week's whipping boy is. And it rotates around the team, doesn't it? It means the whole team and how it defends the goal. Or if you're going to play possession football, how it defends the ball. Because, we've seen from Barcelona and Manchester City, you don't defend their goal, they defend the ball. Whichever way he's going to go, he's got to do it. So that's two things. And the third one is, and this is where I think he has more difficulty, is, as you say, in order to heal the wounds, because I see all you lot who go there regularly and what pain it's been for the last 6 months or so. When people say to me, I live here out there as the Republic of Ireland. I've lived here for 5 years this month. And people say, what do you miss about London? I would always say Turkish restaurants and been at the bowl up Spurs. Now I just say Turkish restaurants because I don't want to be involved with going up there at £80 a pop. I'd be absolutely truthful with you to see that kind of nonsense. He wants to play on the front foot. He wants to play attacking football. That is good thing to say, really rich words and music to our ears. Harder to do in the Premier League. We don't know because he has no experience in the big leagues. He's done it in Japan, he's done it in Australia, and he's done it in Scotland. But in at least in Scotland, he had the dominant team, and it's easy to play on the front foot when you're the dominant team. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts when he realises in some games in the Premier League, the ball doesn't come your way, the opposition are doing the attacking and all the rest of it. I hope, and I've got no reason to doubt, that he's got the wherewithal, the resource, the brains to, move things around when the time comes. With still the basic intention, though, is to get the team up the field, passing to each other in a dynamic way. I don't want to say the Spurs way because people will point out to me the shortcomings of that phrase, but you all know what I mean in your hearts. Certain clubs have a certain way. You're all nodding beautifully. That was really synchronized. That was good. It's like we practiced.
That's years of hurt, that is, Danny. That's what it is.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's the DNA of the club. And what we had was that the part of the pain that's currently we're all experiencing was the gap between Levy's infamous speech about the club's DNA and what he was going to do, and the appointment successively 1, 2, 3 after another of utterly defensive managers. The gap between that aspiration and that reality is enough to cause people to go slightly bonkers. And if you follow social media and you look at podcasts, vodcasts, articles, all the rest of it, people have gone slightly bonkers about the whole thing. And that's the cause of it. So if he can at least set out to say we are going to try to play dynamic front foot football, then he will have achieved 3 things. I mean, the club has got a million things to do, but the things that he does will be the ones that have the most effect. Director of football, I'm not going to swear on it because I don't know what your policy is. But
I do what you want.
You know, when we had a whole podcast, it lasted an hour about a new director of football. And eventually I just said, does anyone give a fuck who the new director of football is? Because do they have the slightest influence? No, not really. Not really. I mean, we've now got one who's working behind the scenes, who's banned from most kinds of football. We found a wrinkle for Barassi to carry on. All that stuff will look after itself. If the team and the fans, you lot watching and you lot in these boxes in front of me, if you are somehow, again, engaged and excited by what's going on, and that'll be the treasure that he is aiming for in the next few months.
Rick, let's come over to you. Rick, you're looking...
Quickly, though, Danny, just quickly on that, just a quick one. Do you think he can do it, Danny?
I don't know is the answer. I wouldn't claim to know the answer to that. Here's what I do know. All managerial appointments are a gamble. Unless, in the current climate, unless you get Klopp, Pep, or Carlo Ancelotti, it is a gamble. Nagelsmann, everyone was nuts for Nagelsmann at the start of this process. Nagelsmann would have been just as big a gamble as Postecoglou because he's used to having dominant teams in a different kind of league. Who knows? I mean, clearly he's got... I mean, I've got to be careful. People who make their living appearing on radio and things are not without ego. But, you know, when he dyes his eyebrows for interviews and things like that, you think, okay, the British press are going to be onto this very, very quickly. So I don't know is the answer how he's going to do. The things that I like so far are the way that he speaks about the thing. And I also think people will say, oh, he's, you know, oh, my God, he's only managed in Scotland and Australia and all the rest of it. What I take from that is if he was a player who'd made his way from the Australian League to the Premier League, we'd all be saying, what a guy. That takes some doing. That takes determination, skill, all the rest of those things, and personality. Exactly the same with managers. You know, we've rotated the same handful of elite managers through the Premier League's top 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 clubs for the past 10 years. Spurs have had 2 of them in the past 3 years. With absolutely no success at all. And I think maybe it's the optimist in me. The glass is always half full for me. I think there's as much chance of him being successful as anybody else. I also like the fact that he's not... This is the high point of his career so far. He's happy to be here. He's thrilled to be here. He was working in the A-League not so very long ago, and now, and I can see in the background to the visuals here, he walks out into that stadium, onto that pitch, looks around, thinks, oh my God. I don't get the impression he's the type of guy to be intimidated by it. He'll say, well done, Ange. You've done really well here, mate. Now let's kick on. So I'm optimistic without being foolishly optimistic, which is my normally default position.
You know, it makes me laugh when it come around to you. Daddy said he's looking so much forward to come in and play at the top of the stadium. Give it a couple of weeks, he probably can't wait to get signed off and written off of it. Rick, let's hand over to you, Rick. Go for it, my friend.
Yes, Danny, it's so good to be on with you, mate. Not only do I listen to you on talkSPORT, but I listen to A View from the Lane when I'm in the gym, and I love your insights. I always love your opinions, and I always love that you're not afraid. You're not afraid to share them as well. You know.
No, Ricky. Now I've got a terrible image of you in lycra shorts, listening to my voice sweating like a pig. That ain't good.
Listen,
I'm going to write that down so I can show it to my therapist.
Wait, listen, whatever does it for you on a Monday.
That's Charlie Eccleshare,
you know what
I
mean? No, but I've got a bit of a twofold question for you.
Yeah,
now,
sure.
The board themselves, they made some catastrophic mistakes over the last couple of years and for their tenure, really. And part of my question is, one, do you think that they're going to learn from their mistakes and actually kind of do the right things at the right times and back this manager? And two, how much influence, because it's not everyone has Daniel Levy as the face of the board because he is the chairman, but he also has Donna Cullen and another couple that I can't remember their name right now. But how much influence do they have over Daniel, and how do you think that they've performed?
I'll answer the second question first. Again, I'll answer it with a knowledgeable I don't know. Football clubs are extraordinary things, aren't they? In that no human activity, with possible exception of sort of hugging and kissing, is under more permanent spotlight than football, and it reflects back nothing. We get no information, we get no knowledge. There are a few journalists out there who know how to dig deep and occasionally find the things, and they're on, you know, the big platforms, the national papers, the Athletic, things like that, because this massive inquisitorial light that we shine onto the sport, it comes back as white noise. So I don't know who takes his advice from. Clearly, he needs to get some advice about the football side of things that works, and it is not encouraging that they keep reconstructing. Terrible phrase here, the structure below him. 1 minute it's Appraoch, then it's Steinson. He's now gone. These people last on average. I mean, there are people in the First World War who probably thought, he's not lasted long, has he? These people are lasting weeks now. Nobody bothers to learn their Christian name because they'll be gone soon, you know. The bloke who paints the names on the floor in the car park has got RSI because of what's going on there. There is a rotating door of so-called experts who wander in their tremendously well-appointed suits, advise Daniel. Daniel gets bored with them, or they get banned from world football, and they're on their way. So I don't know. The answer is, I guess it would be better, and this is the stupidest thing I've said so far. Don't worry, I'll say more stupid things in a minute. Would be if we had a situation like at Bayern Munich, where people who know the club, love the club, are inside the club, are advising the ultimate managerial decisions. Of course, Bayern Munich's itself in chaos these days, but all clubs outside the Premier League are in chaos because of the financial gravity that the Premier League keeps putting, the pressure it puts on all the other clubs. A pressure that the Premier League clubs may, over the next 24 months, start to feel themselves from the direction of Saudi Arabia. More about that later, presumably. As regards learning from their mistakes, that is so difficult to be honest. Here's the problem. I'm going to go back. I'm going to grind back to the base metal here. We fans tend to measure the decline of Spurs in recent years from the penalty against Liverpool in the Champions League final. We got cheated out of a fair chance to win the Champions League. We didn't win it. The players got exhausted and disappointed. The manager did too, and it's fallen away. That, in my mind, is not where Daniel Levy may have become fatigued. He reached his high water mark with the announcement of the European Super League. I was on air on talkSPORT at the start of a 3-hour show when they announced it. If you remember, they announced it on a Sunday night to stop the jip. And I was about to start my show, 3 hours, and up came this thing about the European Super League on the television over there in front of me. And suddenly Tottenham's name was on it. And I went into 3 hours of denunciation of this awful evil that was being visited on global football, on European football, on the English football pyramid, this heinous crime against the fans, the supporters, and the generations who've gone before us and built these football clubs. And yet inside of me, there was a little thing going all the time. Something like that, as I was saying the words, I go, hooray, Spurs are in it. How has he pulled this off? What an achievement. Spurs haven't won a trophy at that time. It was 13 years. And they're in the blinking Super League. They're one of the elite teams in the Super League. How has Daniel Levy pulled this off? Oh, no, this is terrible. It must be stopped. Get out on the streets with your torches and your rakes. We must put a stop to this evil. He's got us in the Super League. Fantastic. This was going on inside my body, in my mind, when it actually happened. I wonder whether Daniel Levy thought that was the moment when he cemented the club into an echelon of success that was self-perpetuating and could never be argued against, and would also guarantee the value of the club in perpetuity. That fell apart because rightly fans said this is an abomination. And I suspect that his actual energy, he would deny this, and he'll probably have to sue you, Ricky, because he would deny this and say, I am as into the project as ever. But that was a high water business mark for him. Now, there is another possible, the tide's coming in again, because I suspect the European Super League will be back very, very soon as a prospect, this time larded with Saudi Arabian money. And we've all seen in the Gulf how that worked out. Everybody was against it 100% until it happened, 100%. And my suspicion is that he'll be manoeuvring to make sure that Spurs don't miss that gravy train. Whether you want to be on that train, I look at all of you, is up to you. But so will he learn from his lessons, learn lessons from his mistakes? I don't think he's the type. Businessmen, by and large, like football managers, don't think they make mistakes. They think circumstance conspires against them. And that's why the very greatest managers, Guardiola changes all the time. Ferguson changed all the time. They adapt to the circumstances, and I'm not sure that most successful businessmen do. They see what they've done, they look at their giant pile of cash, and they go, I'm doing all right here. So my answer to you is I don't suppose, Ricky, that they will learn from their mistakes. Although if they want to make the most important public face of their product, the actual football team, successful, then they've got to learn from them.
Jace, come over to you. We obviously discuss a lot about the biggest obstacles that has to be overcome. And it's not the first time there, Jason, I'll mute you there. We've discussed maybe the relationship with Daniel leaving the board, having to overcome that potential obstacle, winning the players over, dealing with the nature of the bloated squad once those loanees do return. I think Spurs have got a number, which maybe Charlie will share, Jack Bickbrook, your esteemed colleague, Danny, will have to maybe correct me on. I think it's about 37 players Spurs will have that will rock up to pre-season, which sounds absolutely insane. A number that Graham Potter wouldn't have been too familiar with, of course, when he was obviously Chelsea manager, and we saw how that lasted. Jace, for you, you've told us very, very often in the last couple of days, don't panic, don't worry that we haven't done anything yet, because ultimately these players, if we sign anybody right now, they'll be in a sunbed, right?
I'm certainly not in the least bit worried that nothing's happened on June the 25th. I think, I think all of us within our group know that things are happening. That we all know the goalkeeper will go through. For instance, Kulusevski is obviously going to be signed. Porro will be signed. So there's two loans that become a signing. We know that goalkeeper will be signed, whether it's announced tomorrow or whether it's announced in 2 weeks. We know that's going to happen. I think we're all fairly confident that Maddison will get done. Confident, but it doesn't have to be done tomorrow. It's just calm yourself down. You've got the Lord's Test match to enjoy. You've got Wimbledon to enjoy. You've got the Open Golf to enjoy. Just have a couple of weeks.
You haven't got to the Tour de France. And the Tour de France. Say it, otherwise I'm off.
The Tour de France is on, and the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe is on or something. And just calm down. Go on your holiday yourself. Get your EasyJet flight to Malaga or Ibiza or wherever, and just enjoy and chill out for a couple of weeks without begging to know what's happening. Because if we sign 25 players tomorrow, none of them will do anything for Tottenham for 3 more weeks. So chill out a bit. Chill out a bit. And
you are right, but that's not how people.
We have one person in this group.
Just their football now.
We have one person in this group who has lost his marbles completely in the last few days. And he comes on our group chat and he says, we haven't done this, we haven't done that. Meanwhile, Arsenal are signing Rice. And when I look tonight, Declan Rice is still employed by West Ham United, not Arsenal. And Kai Havertz is still employed by Chelsea, not Arsenal. So all these things that the others have done and we haven't, actually, they're talking to players and we're talking to players. So chill out, please. Go and watch something else. And don't sit there and be glued to Fabrizio bloody Romano every 5 minutes.
But I hear you, and it's a lovely speech, but football fans, particularly younger football fans, they ingest their football.
It's football manager syndrome, isn't it? I buy a player on Football Manager computer in 1 minute. Why does Tottenham take 10 weeks?
24-hour rolling news, 24-hour sports radio, millions of podcasts, and all kinds of artificial intelligence stuff going on like this. It all means that there's something else as well here. I think we should address. That all means that people they can't. There was a time when I'm the oldest person in this group, so there was a time when you couldn't get the football results until the next day in the lower leagues, things like that. And you had to think, well, I wonder how Orient got on. And in order to ring your mate who was gone to the match, I didn't pick up my mobile phone. I had to leave the house because we didn't have a phone. I crossed the road, go up the high pavement in Essex Road in Islington, put money into a big red box and ring my mate to find out how Lake Orient had got on. But the world has changed dramatically from there. But here's the real problem, I think, and this is what you're, I think, pressing on, is that for many young modern football fans, and I'm not having a go at them because they're the future of the game and of Spurs, let's not kid ourselves, the transfer window is almost as important as the actual football matches. I'll tell you for why.
Yeah.
Because it gives them a false sense of being very close to, being proximitous to the two things that society has trained them to be obsessed with. One, celebrity. Harry Kane is first and foremost England football manager, England football captain, great footballer, but he's a celebrity to them. He's somebody who has a big house in Essex and a smaller one nearer the training ground, but we keep quiet about that. And they feel that they're near to James Maddison or whoever this week's big transfer celebrity is, because that's what they are. And secondly, it gives them a feeling, because we're talking about 40 million, 50 million, 70 million, 100 million pounds for Declan Rice. It gives them a feeling of a false feeling of being very close to large amounts of money. And so the twin obsessions of celebrity and money cross over most obviously in January and June and July each year in the transfer window. And that's why people are obsessed with it. They think they're part of the process. Writing on Twitter, I really don't understand why we haven't gone for Dave Bloggs, who plays for Blackburn. It makes you feel like you're part of the process. I agree with you. You're not. The process is going on out of sight, behind your back. But that's not the way a lot of younger people, I think in particular, bless them, think about the game.
I did say this off here. I think we can definitely rule out a Jason and Danny collaboration for some of our transfer shows on Wednesday evenings.
I love it when you look at somebody and it's just pay the money, just show some ambition, and then ask the wife and say to her, where do you want to live? Do you want the little 2 up and 2 down, or do you want the mansion out in Berkshire? She says, I want the mansion. So are you going to show her you've got ambition, or are you going to say, well, actually, we can only afford the 2 up, 2 down in Boreham Wood or something? I mean, that's the reality.
With all due respect to Boreham Wood.
And when the bloke in Boreham Wood says, I want 300 or 700,000 for the house,
listen, financial.
You've got to say, no, I'm going to pay 850,000 for
financial probity is good. It's right that you shouldn't chuck your money about, whether it's buying houses in Boreham Wood or trying to buy footballers. But behind that, there is a separate question. Spurs are, by the measure of Deloitte's, either the 10th or 11th richest football club in the world in terms of revenue, the value of their squad, what they might get for the club if it was to go on sale, and all the rest of it. So while I am all for Daniel Levy being careful with the money, although I think it's embarrassing to be lowballing for German centre halves, putting in offers that that just cannot be accepted. The other part of that is he has to explain why, if Spurs are one of the biggest clubs in world football, which they undoubtedly are, why not about the transfers? That you might be clever, you might get a Dele Alli for 5 million, but why the players aren't paid as though they are in one of the top clubs in world football? And it's that disparity that I think he would have to, if he was in this room now, when he comes on your next, when he's probably lined up, isn't he, to be on, Ricky?
Yeah, hopefully a couple weeks' time, fingers crossed.
On the last word on Spurs.
Is that right, Macca?
I'd be really happy to come on with him. My first question would be, I get it. You don't want to pay £200 million for a footballer with a bad knee. Why don't you pay the ones you've got or you're getting in as much as the other rival clubs do? Because I'm telling you now, I work, for instance, and Danny won't mind me saying this, with Danny Murphy, a talkSPORT, former Spurs player. And Danny tells me on and off air that Spurs have a reputation for not paying their players as much. And it puts players off. And then you see them lowballing offers and you think that's not how, you've got a wheel and deal. I get that. But you don't want to be doing that in public, putting in the German centre half. I'm struggling for his name now. One of the many that we're after.
Mickey Van der Ven? Mickey Van der Ven?
For 25 million. No, the Tapsoba. We put in a bid for 25 million. That club believe they can get 60 million for that lad. Now, let's say they're wrong. Let's say they can get 45 million for them. A bid of 25 million, all it does is shows your hand and makes you look like mugs in the market. Unless, of course, it's a smokescreen and they're actually going to somebody else, and you're in order to get in order to get, Jason, all of the other people off your back, you pretend you're going for player Y when you go for player X. I've
never understood that.
The wages thing bothers me. When you see that Van der Sar, and Manchester United are a bigger club than Spurs in that financial wrecking, but their unwanted goalkeeper earns twice as much as Harry Kane. I mean, that in any other industry, people would be going, that's a strange one, isn't it? And that's what I would ask to Daniel Levy. Not that he's invested money in the squad. Some would say not enough, but if you look at the list of the top 20 spends Spurs have had, how many real successes have there been? The jury's out on Romero. Son is the obvious example of where it has worked, and the rest of them have been in between no good and a complete waste of money. So he's right to be careful with his money, but that's one kind of money. The wages is another thing. I know what he'd say, that the transfer fees are irrelevant because they go around the game. You sell to Gareth Bale, then you reinvest the money, and the transfer fee, the money going out of the game is wages. And I understand that, but you can't compete if you're not actually competing, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. For our watching audience here, they've got nearly over 2,000 of you watching us live. So again, thank you so much for all of your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs in what is meant to be a bit of a break away from the football. But look, as you guys know, we don't really take a break here on Last Word on Spurs for good or for bad. I'll let you guys ask these gentlemen how the relationships are going. Fair to say, Spurs testing even when they're not on the field of play. What we are going to do, Jason's next favourite subject, we're just going to dive a little bit into the transfer window, only on the basis that there has been maybe a bit of a change in the dynamics at Tottenham where they're going for more of a data-driven approach. I got to say, for our listeners and audio, Jason is down the lights, not for the first time at Last Word on Spurs. Normally that's after us going out of the Cup to Forest or Sheffield United, so it's a familiar sight in the McGovern household, that's for sure. What I am going to do, I'm going to hand back over to Senor Cracknell, and then we'll go to Lee and Rick. Cracks, over to you to take us away with maybe Spurs' new dynamic approach to the transfer window.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rick. So what I'm going to do now is just completely ignore your question about transfers and go somewhere else because I love the chaos of going off script.
I love it, Crackers. Go on, boy.
And I don't want to talk about transfers because we can't do anything about them. And we've got Danny Kelly here, and I've got a far more interesting question than which German fullback we're after. So, Danny, Spurs make a cup final under Ange Postecoglou, playing very, very well, and you find yourself getting a ticket for the cup final, very nice seats. But all of a sudden, a concert comes up that night or that afternoon as well, and you can have any artist, alive or dead, at any venue. Who stops you going to that cup final to go and watch them in concert?
This is good, Richard, because it's actually something I was thinking about the last 24 hours. Because, of course, my head is full of nonsense. The Glastonbury thing brought this to a focus for me, and I was thinking they had Paul McCartney last year, and then they've had Elton John this year, and it's a kind of massive sort of goodbye to the public and all the rest of it. And I thought at the time, forgive me, next year, people were putting in my timeline, who should headline Glastonbury next year? And the answer I had is impossible, is that Sly Stone of Sly and the Family Stone, the great funk group, and from 1969 and 70, the greatest group on the planet, is still very much alive. But of course, he's completely bonkers and cannot, because of his various personal problems, including, I'm saying this, his drug abuse. He can't be trusted with money or a band, and he just can't get himself together, although he's got an autobiography coming out. So I thought that the headline at Glastonbury next year should be just Sly Stone, just walks onto the stage and for 2 hours just waves at people. And they should all applaud him and say, you, sir, invented funk and funk rock and all the things that we now hear iterated over and over again in modern R&B and hip-hop and all the rest of it. You, sir, are Sly Stone. We don't need you to play any songs. Just stand there in your big hat and we will applaud you wildly for 2 hours. And I guess if that was happening against Spurs in a cup final, I'd probably still go to the cup final, actually, because, of course, pop music is recorded. The wonderful things that we all love and the things that have lifted my soul on occasions, they are there all the time. Whereas the possibility, this is why sport is so amazing, the possibility of doing something for new and brilliant, I'd probably still go to the cup final. I'll tell you a little secret here. This is where I do my broadcasting from, talkSPORT Radio, the podcast, and all the rest of it. And I keep this with me. And it's the flag I picked up at Wembley the last time Spurs won a trophy, the 2008 Carling Cup final at Wembley. I keep it with me to remind me that there is still glory out there, but also, for those of you pessimists among you, to remind me of how long it's been since I had a chance to wave a flag like that. I am hopefully very realistic about the problems of getting trophies in an arena as competitive as English football, but I also live in eternal hope that thing will happen. And if Postecoglou, you asked, they're number 4 on his list. Take the bloody cups seriously. Do not be putting out half-assed, half-and-half teams, Colchester, out in these games, and then expecting fans to put up with, that was a bit unlucky, went out on penalties to Nottingham Pork Butchers. No, take those competitions seriously. Now, we all know what will happen. Spurs will win the League Cup, and everybody who said Harry Kane has to leave because he can't win a trophy, Spurs are used to don't win a trophy, they will say that's the wrong trophy. That's not the trophy they should have won. Fuck that. We will be delighted, and more importantly, the young people who parade around the streets of London and Manchester and Barcelona in Spurs shirts will be justified in what they believe the world should be like. That's why the trophy thing doesn't bother me. I know how hard it is to win trophies. You take away the oil state backed companies. I include Chelsea in that because Abramovich got his money out of robbing a nation of its oil wealth and its shale wealth. Take away those out of the equation. The number of clubs in England who've won trophies in recent time, and you have to congratulate any of them that even get across the line, and that includes local neighbours who win the FA Cup, things like that. Is very, very little. But it'd be important to get one. To get the monkey off the back, but for the young kids, I really think it would be such a big thing. And young kids can't afford to go to the Spurs Stadium, whatever it's going to be called, Coca-Cola and Norma Dome, whatever eventually gets around to selling it to. But they watch it on the television. They watch it on their phones, more like, of course, in tiny highlighted chunks. And for them, who are just as passionate about Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as I am, but I got sated when I was young with trophies came and went. I want them to win a trophy, not to prove some point to for Daniel Levy or for the manager or whoever, but for the young kids to say, I support Spurs and I'm proud of them. Look what they've won. It will never be the right trophy. It will never be the right trophy. Of course, we know that.
Can I just say, I did promise this show will go off script. So what Richard done there is absolutely deliberate. And Rich, keep on doing it, please. For those that are aware where this show might be going, who needs a direction.
I was just going to say, Rick, we could choose Blue because they do it at Wembley during the half-time break when we're down having a beer. Wouldn't it? He could get his whole playlist on during the half-time break.
Richard, what event would stop you going to see Spurs next cup win? It doesn't have to be music.
Man,
would you miss the cup final for, let's say, a daughter's wedding?
Yes, yeah. Football has its place for me.
Right way.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, family. Even though I did take my wife to Wembley to see us play West Ham on our anniversary once, and she's very understanding. I think musically,
she'd have to be crackers, wouldn't she? I've got a list here of Britain's most patient women, and your missus is number 3 on the list. Very, very good.
That she is. That she is. I think
the other wives are both on this list as well. The people are on this.
I'll be far behind on that race, I'll tell you.
Yeah, Ricky's wife. Wow, patience of a saint, absolute saint. But I think only Bowie and the Butthole Surfers would actually stop me going to the cup final.
Oh,
musically.
That is an amazing mission. This is what this podcast is for. All those who are interested in Spanish left backs, turn off now. Why the Butthole Surfers, Rick? Because that's a very, very hard band to like a lot, isn't it?
Danny, Locust Abortion Technician, one of the finest albums ever. I just love them. Just absolutely like we've lost it. That's it. Me and Danny are gone.
Did their drummer die last week?
Yes, Teresa Nervosa, passed away sadly last week.
She's still there in the old canister. Don't worry about that.
Well done. See, this is why I love Dan. This is why I love Danny Kelly. At the cutting edge. I can talk. The only man on this show I can talk the Butthole Surfers with.
The Butthole Surfers drummer died last week. That's how that's got into my canister. I have no idea, but there it is.
I did say the show will take in all different directions. Rick, if I can come over to you, just to quickly steer a little bit back on club news. We'll see where this goes. We're not sure where this might go.
Spurs Why are you insisting on this path that nobody wants, Ricky?
Because we haven't covered it and we've been gone for about a couple of weeks. Rick, very quickly, Spurs look like they're going to be closing on their goalkeeper. Vicario is looking like the man through the door. I think it's fair to say before we come on to some of this data-driven situation, I know Jason and Cracks and Danny got absolutely no interest in whatsoever. Rick, Vicario, from what you've seen, potentially happy with his appointment? Or happy with the appointment of this goalkeeper?
You know what? A bit like what Danny was saying earlier, I think it's all about the fit. And I think, every manager and every player is a gamble, whether you spend 100 million on them or 5 million on them. And I think with this kind of data-driven kind of focus on this goalkeeper, I'm hoping that it's going to be a gem that we've got for a good price. We've all seen the triple saves, but there is little bits of concerns for me. He parries with his hands and his feet a lot, and it goes back into the middle of the box. And I worry about the speed of opposition kind of coming in and nicking a goal that way. I haven't seen him catch too much. I haven't seen him, kind of dominate crosses too much. So I do have concerns. But what I would come back to is it was the potential signing of Amrabat. Way back when we signed Bentancur, when we mentioned Amrabat at the time, everybody, including myself, a lot of us, including myself, was like very kind of underwhelmed by the name Amrabat, and we didn't want him, and it was like, who is this, and why are we bringing him in? But then fast forward 6 months, and he goes to the World Cup and absolutely smashes it, and then he's tripled his price. So a lot of the fans have been saying, and a lot of us have been saying that one of the biggest problems was Spurs recruitment and the way that we recruit. And if we're going towards this data-driven aspect and this data-driven focus of players, then I'm hoping that this is going to be a gem for us. But I would love to know what Danny felt about that type of comparison. The Amrabat.
I need to ask you. This is now received wisdom. This is now given us the truth. The Spurs have transferred from one model to the data model. Have they really? I mean, it's not been announced. Nobody has a job that's called Data King, Data Queen, Data Empress, whatever it's going to be. We've just decided among ourselves in the upper echelons of the reporting glitterati that Spurs have moved on to a data-driven model. Now, it's not the worst idea, although it is the model that tends to be used by clubs who are in the middle of the pack in leagues because they can't afford to be competing, to buy Kai Havertz, not necessarily want to do that. When did this get announced by Spurs that they've changed their model? I don't understand it at all. Now, as regards the goalkeeper, David Raya would have been the off the peg Premier League proven fit. That's a given, and he would have been less of a gamble. Still a gamble because that's what you said is absolutely true. So this fella, you worry sometimes when you don't see any other teams going in for him. Although perhaps Inter might have done if they lose Onana and all, or one of the Milan clubs. They're both in danger of losing their goalkeepers. They might have come and got him. The only thing I've got so far that I've really enjoyed is that he's named Venom. Because the Venom in the film where he's got all the arms and legs coming out, I mean, that would be great. If you're going to be named after, he's a counter. He's a counter hero. He's not an anti-hero, isn't he? He's not really a hero, Venom. Though I like those films a lot because I like Tom Hardy. At least he's got a good nickname. So there's one thing ticked. The triple save, of course, proves your point. The triple save is necessary because he palms the first shot back into the path of the opposition. So while it's a brilliant thing to have on your CV reel, anybody who's a goalkeeping analyst, I'm not, but David Priest is, and he pointed this out to me. This could have all been avoided if he'd got the first touch right. It's a great triple save, of course, and that's what you pay your money for, to see somebody curl something in the top corner, a 9-pass move that's ended with a back heel over the line, or a goalkeeper making a triple save. But in that case, it was almost manufactured by his own technique of what he did. But he's big. He's at the right age. You don't want to be... It's unfair, isn't it? But we know that look at the lad at Leeds. If goalkeepers are young, and once they start to come under pressure, they don't have that solid self-belief and confidence that comes from years and years and years of playing in goal to allow them through the bad spell. He's the right age. He could kick on again. You know, each club he's gone to, he's improved because he's not been at any big clubs. We shall see. I mean, he seems like a perfectly reasonable shot at having a replacement for Hugo Lloris, who, let's be honest, at the start of the last season on the View from the Lane podcast, I said, at least we don't have to worry about the goalkeeper. You know, we've had a decade of not having to worry about that position. And then Hugo has a horrible season, admittedly behind a terrible defence. And it's probably his time for him to go. Again, modern football drives me a bit mad. We didn't get a chance. A man who has served the club, I think, with tremendous skill and dignity for a decade, we don't get a chance to say goodbye to them. That human connection that used to be so important in football, then it transferred from being, you know, a pastime into a business. And we all know that happened, and we get that. That connection between the fans and the players. I know they try and do it with, you know, arrival videos and all the rest of stupid unveilings. Chance to applaud Jan Vertonghen off the pitch. You don't get that. And I find that really, really distressing. Just 2 minutes to say, you, sir, have done okay. Everybody makes mistakes. Hugo Lloris has made a lot of mistakes. He also saved Spurs a ton of points over the last decade. We don't get a chance to applaud him off the pitch. I think it's a shame.
Yeah, totally agree. Lee, if I can bring you in, because Lee, you do have a number of businesses that are very much data-driven. So I feel only right to kind of bring you in because there's obviously lots going around the fact that Spurs have now, from their perspective, as Danny said, they've kind of, well, from a fan perspective, we've kind of ushered this way in now that we're looking at almost a data-driven model. I know you're a big fan of it based on your businesses. What do you make of it, Lee, for you? Is this something we should be championing right now, or is it something we should be just a little bit reluctant to go overboard on?
No, I think Rob in the comments has absolutely nailed it. I mean, he's either listening to me or we share the exact same views. I mean, 80% of our decisions should be based around data for certain things. I mean, Danny just mentioned about years of playing in goals where you gain the experience from, which is obviously correct. But how can you test whether or not somebody is going to be able to handle the pressure in a certain scenario? So there's, you know, it's the data-driven decisions is not necessarily can you kick with both feet or can you throw the ball out to, you know, the halfway line or whatever. The data-driven decisions for me is around the personality, the actual individual. Has this individual got the right, you know, behaviours and competencies to be able to handle it at a top 5, top 6 football club in the top best league in the world? You know, has this individual got the ability to step up and do the business when it really matters? And that's the sort of stuff that you need to be looking at measuring. In my opinion, that's what my business does anyway. So, looking at the data around personality and behaviours, regardless if it's football, cricket, business, supermarket, doesn't actually matter. It's human, right? So that's the reality. Is like you don't know how you're going to act until you're actually in that situation. So putting people in that situation, measuring that, understanding, okay, what does that look like? That's where you're going to get the real truth. The issue, of course, with that is that if you've never been in a penalty shootout before, how do you know you're going to react? So it's hard to do that. So that's why character, personality, behaviour comes into play, and that's why the majority of people leave work, will leave businesses, leave their careers, leave football clubs, whatever. Not because they can't play football. Let's be brutally honest about it. Most people, if not all people in the league, people will have a go at Eric Dyer and whatever, and he's a worse player. If he's not, technically, he's not a bad player at all. He's a very, very good player. But what happens is that you maybe lose confidence, and this is behavioural. This is a psychological piece or behavioural piece. That's the bit of data for me that we should be looking at when we're hiring.
Lee, if I could ask you a question here, because it's in your business. Spurs can talk about, and they haven't done, but let's assume they are, turning to a data model. It strikes me that is based on other clubs doing it quite successfully. Not all of them. Southampton were a data club who've now been relegated. The Premier League's very competitive. Brentford are a data club who are doing good. And of course, at the top of the tree is Brighton and Hove Albion, who have produced a World Cup winner, £200 million midfielders from very, very reasonably priced buys in because of the way they do the data. Now, again, I know the Bloom family from my own business background, and Tony Bloom did not say we're going to be a data club and we're going to have 3 blokes or 2 girls, whatever it's going to be, banging away at the database of Football Manager. Tony Bloom took the huge operation in his gambling business where there were hundreds of kids behind computers in Camden Town. I don't know where it's all going on, and converted a whole load of them into analysing football data with the same precision and laser-like skill that they were taking to horse racing and baseball and basketball, the things that people were betting on. You can't just say we're going to do data. You've got to have people who are skilled in this. You've got to have the systems that I'm sure you know about. I mean, have you got any faith that Spurs, if they're going to go that route, will invest the kind of people power that you need to make it successful?
I mean, have I got faith? No. I think that's where there's so much to do at the football club, and that's why most people will say nothing changed. Well, Crackers, this is your line, so forgive me, bud. But I'm copying it because of affection for you, Crackers. But nothing changes until it changes, right? That's what Crackers says all the time. And unless I think the sexy bit about that is that Daniel Levy may or may not be going down the data route, and everyone's jumping on this data route. But actually, if they don't do it properly, it's just going to fall. It's House of Cards, right? So it is clear. What's very interesting about that insight from you, Danny, there is with Tony Bloom and the level of precision, because they are getting things right, and not all of the time. And this is where everybody needs to chill as well. Like what Jason said, it's not always the same thing. Like you don't always get the right results all of the time. What I would say about the mid-table club versus the top clubs, I think we're all naive, and viewers and listeners as well, would be a bit naive to think that the homework, whether or not it's data-driven or not, and I can guarantee you it is, because that's the world we live in nowadays, done at the top clubs like Bayern Munich, like Real Madrid, like Man City, of course that's going on as well. It might not be termed as we've got loads of data analysts and data-driven, but it's the same thing. It's just that data element of, are these individuals good enough technically to fit in a system or fit in a play around where we are? But equally, where I'm coming from, where my business is not nothing to do with football, but where my business is about is that personality and behaviour piece. It is about, has that individual, then people got the right mentality, the right personality to work in an environment. And we're getting some outstanding results with what we're doing. And Tony and his teams are getting outstanding results with what they're doing in football. So there's obviously something to be there. And then you overlay on top of that, without taking it so far off, Rick, but if you overlay that AI with what is exactly going on with AI, and it's a whole new different podcast, and it's definitely not even sports related, but you start looking at what artificial intelligence is now doing and what will happen in the next kind of 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, football is going to be completely transformed around that data piece.
And that is why, Lee, when people will start to talk, and this is where I'm as impatient as the next person. People will talk about Ange Postecoglou. Of course, you've got to give him time. I totally get that, and I agree. But this idea of 3-year projects, 5-year projects that the managers keep still spewing out is nonsense. That is over in football. Just think about the last 3 years. You could have had your plans. You could have had your processes in place. You could have had all the things that make these projects work. In that time, we've had COVID, we had the European Super League, we've had a World Cup move to the middle of the football season, the European football season, and we've had Saudi Arabia making its first, but not very small, incursions into the way that the game has traditionally been financed in Europe, which remains, we'll see how that goes on, the pinnacle of the game. None of those 4 things could have been predicted. And so the idea that you're going to say we're going to put the squad together over the next 3 years and then it's nonsense. what Postecoglou has to do, what Vincent Kompany did at Burnley, what Arsenal have done in pretty sharp time, and there are other examples all over the continent, is you have to get your team ready for this season. There's no point in saying it's going to take 5 transfer windows because you don't know what's coming down the line. Of course, the average tenure of a Premier League manager, we used to laugh about the Continentals booting out their managers every 9 months. Exactly the same now in the Premier League. All right, that figure in the top leagues in England is exaggerated by Watford, who keep the average up very, very high indeed. But I don't believe in projects anymore. Get the best 20 players you can get for the new season, get them managed to inspire them, and hope that you get a brilliant season out of it, achieve your ambitions. But I think in a world that's changing so quickly, and Lee is exactly right, that AI and new levels of electronic involvement with the game will change it again, unrecognizable. So pretending that you're going to do these projects, and and this is a get out as well for the management and for the owners. Spurs can say we're off on a new cycle now, it'll take 3 or 4 years, sit back and relax, watch it all happen. No, there isn't the space for that. Compete now. And of course, that isn't necessarily you've got to go and buy Kylian Mbappe, but you've got to get the stuff you've got, the players you've got in the squad, and the manager you've got to manage them. You have to achieve what you're going to achieve as soon as you can. Partially because, the Premier League is so competitive. You lose 3 games, you'll find yourself in a relegation scrap. If you lose 3 successive games. But more importantly, I think that the world is... Each new electronic discovery, each new iteration of technology has one characteristic, and it's this. It has hastened the arrival of the next piece of technology. We human beings who measure things in 75-year cycles because of our own life cycle in Europe, we can't get to grips with this. Everything accelerates the next thing that's coming. So I think football clubs, they like to think about, in these cycles and things, it kind of gets them out of the present day problems. And of course, they are helped by this, by the fact that the money keeps flowing through the door, whether you're successful or not, to a large extent. But the idea that we have these timelines that proceed into the middle distance, that's all talk from the past now. Look at American football. Everyone rebuilds their team every year. Now, the world is different there because the way it's structured. But nobody is talking about we're really going to, in 5 years' time, you wait to see, we'll be making a Super Bowl. We're going to have to do it this year.
No, I totally agree. Jace, I want to come around to you. We are going to close it on the question. We could be for another hour at this rate. What constitutes a successful season? My God, that could be a long discussion. And before we do, and Danny can follow up on this one as well, Jace, after you've answered. We've had a number of questions coming around the element of sovereign wealth base in football. And how, of course, we've seen Chelsea, in the most politest way, they use it to their advantage with a number of outgoings so far, or potentially outgoings in this summer transfer window. And obviously, likewise, we've seen other clubs maybe use that to their economic advantage as well. Does that worry you, Jace, and how maybe that might change the scale of football? Maybe not right now, but in 2-3 years' time?
There's definitely got to be a concern of the way it's going if Saudis start pumping money in. I mean, when you see... Was it N'Golo Kante going for, 185 million a year? Things like that. I mean, you're thinking, that's just, it is utter madness. It is utter madness. We had a mini bit, didn't we, when Chinese Super League started, and we thought, whoa, this is a ridiculous degree of spending going on from a foreign market. But then the Chinese government quickly stopped that, and that petered out. And I suppose that the thing about Saudi football is, for a prime footballer in his peak, does it have the appeal that winning a Champions League would do? Is it more appealing to play for Al Nassr or Al Ittihad than it is for Real Madrid? For me, absolutely not. But there may become a time where if they do become a Super League, and it would be perhaps a global Super League, that you would have Guangzhou Evergrande, and you will have Al Ittihad, and you will have teams, maybe that you'll have Boca Juniors and that in it, then it becomes an entirely different thing if the whole world is competing. And it doesn't surprise me if eventually we do get to a stage where we want a world club, a genuine World Club Cup, not one that's these FIFA summer tournaments or something, but where the real push is. And, it may well be that international football is the one that really suffers through it, that people then really start to see that club football is the pinnacle. I'm watching, Brisbane Roar, and I'm watching Boca Juniors, and this is the best teams. And do you know what? I don't want to watch Wales against Estonia in a qualifier. It's not the same. So I think that there definitely will be major changes and it'll be a lot quicker than we realise, as Danny's alluded to. I don't think we'll be waiting 10 years before it happens. And we've seen it in golf. When you have that much money available to throw into something, that money talks. And you speak to all those other chairmen, and Daniel Levy won't be the only one that would look at it. But you look at the mess that, say, Barcelona's in and say, look, here we go, we're going to offer you a 4 billion cash deal. There's no way they say no to it. And all the human rights sides just goes by the wayside. We saw that, nobody really gave a damn about human rights when they gave a World Cup to Qatar. So they're not going to give a damn about
They did, Jason. I banged on about it for 9 years.
No, us as people do, but the people with the money making those decisions.
No.
Not in the least bit. But you said to Mr. FIFA, do you want this offer from, I don't know, do you want a World Cup in England, or do you want it in Qatar? We'll chuck billions at it. We've seen it with the Russia World Cup. You even saw it to a degree with that. So the politics and the finances will dictate where football's going. But I do think I don't think it'll be a European Super League, but I do think we'll get a World Super League with Inter Miami and all of that involved.
I think that the problem with that will be, and this is where it's laughable how little power we all have over it. There will be if they announced a World Super League tomorrow, people would protest violently on a number of reasons, but one of them would be the carbon footprint of sending players around the world on 24-hour flights to play football matches in Wellington, New Zealand, and Nome, Alaska. The only people who would benefit from that are the people who produce oil. Oh yeah, the Saudi Arabians. It's nuts. Nuts. And very quickly, the Saudi Arabian League is moving very, very fast. The most important transfer was Cristiano Ronaldo. The second most important transfer is Ruben Neves, a player at the absolute peak of his prime, and who's prepared to go there, earn £100 million, whatever he's getting for the 3 years, and still could come back and play for Tottenham or play for whoever in Europe and play in the Champions League or whatever. So that's one thing. The second thing is this is different from the China
Oscar.
Thing.
That's why Oscar was to China, isn't it?
Saudi Arabia is a football nation. Its clubs have won the Asian Champions League. They've been in 6 of the last 8 World Cups. Their national side has won more Asian championships, I think, than anybody except Japan. Their league is established. They have very, very passionate football supporters. So that's a slight difference. And obviously the money is extraordinary. And before anybody starts saying to me, oh, Danny, you're worried about this because you're anti-Arab. On the contrary, it is Arabic people I worry about. I don't live under these regimes. I'm all right, Jack, if you like. Although, you don't want to get too leery in case you get chopped up and put into a suitcase like the fella in Turkey. But it's the Arabic people who live. We are normalizing business with a regime that is not good to its people. At the very least, you can say that. And this is my fear for the Levy out, ENIC out gang as well, that we football fans, we saw it with Newcastle fans who live in one of the most socialist parts of Britain with their miners' galas and all the rest of it, absolutely swallow the Saudi Arabian involvement because it would improve their football team. And so when I see Spurs fans that saying ENIC out, all the rest of it, of course, you're perfectly entitled to that view, as I said at the top of the show, but be careful what you wish for, because I always ask this question. If Kim Jong-un, if North Korea decided they wanted to have a friendly football team and they decided to buy Spurs and they've got infinite money because their people are all starving and all the rest of it, would you accept that? And the number of people just stare at me blankly without an answer, which I take as a yes, is frightening. Football is really important. It has been a large part of my life. But like you, missing your daughter's wedding and all the rest of it, you wouldn't do it because there are more important things than football. And just being used as a massive political and sports washing operation, that's not for me. So be careful what you wish for. The solution is the halfway house. Here in Ireland, the Republic, because of recent tax things going on, sorry to say this, lots of businesses have left the UK to come to Ireland because they need an English-speaking base in the EU. And the Brexit bonus is that we've got lots of these companies paying corporation tax, albeit very low in this island. But they've built a big surplus. And so in copying the Saudi Arabian model, they've set up a national investment fund here in the Republic of Ireland. I am really pressing them a lot to buy Spurs. Spurs could be owned by Ireland, a fantastic democracy. We have our own problems like everybody else. We've got homelessness in Dublin and all that. But a country that keeps on making social progress and all the rest of it. They could own Spurs. I could have some kind of titular role in the whole thing. Wear a big crown and stuff to the home games. That's what I want to happen. And it's the halfway house between being owned by an oil state and wanting to keep some soul about the thing. Let Spurs be bought by Ireland.
Rick, just to jump in now, you're talking about Boca Juniors and this and the prospect of a world league. You talk Argentina, let's face facts, of the seat hanging out the arse of their pants, as an economy, as a country, and football, the league, compared to the Premier League. Boca Juniors are now making plans for a stadium of 120,000 with 35 media suites in this stadium. So you can't tell me that you just can't tell me that there's not something in the pipeline for them to be building such a stadium in a league that's one man and his dog, money wise, it's coming. It's coming.
Keep your eye on whichever American team decides they want to play more games in London. Keep your eye on all of that sort of thing. The upcoming, there's a lot of moves in America to make the South American Champions League, the Middle American Champions League, and the North American Champions League all one tournament. It makes absolutely no sense, sporting or economically. Teams from southern Argentina that are mostly in Buenos Aires, aren't they, will be flying to Canada to play one game. By the time they got back, they'll have missed the second leg, won't they? The journeys are so long. They make no sense. But that is a move towards a world league as well. Now, I'm not as far down the road as you, Richard, with the idea of a world league. I still think it will be a super league based around European clubs. And we'll have the live golf argument. You can always bolt the other teams on later. But this is why Daniel Levy, no matter how many of us protest, if every fan in the stadium and outside the stadium had on the different coloured gear and the signs and all the rest of it, he's never going to sell this club in present circumstances, in my opinion, no matter how disappointed he may have been with Super League One. Premier League clubs are worth a blinking fortune, and that is only going up and up and up. The sale of Manchester United, when it goes through, will break a particular ceiling. You've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. It will make Manchester United more valuable than any of the NFL clubs. And that has been the previous glass ceiling. Investment houses around the world, in the Middle East and America, couldn't imagine that something could be more valuable than, say, I don't know, the New England Patriots, because that's where the sport is properly organised and all the rest of it. Manchester United's deal, off the back of the Chelsea deal, will show that Premier League clubs are more valuable than anything in America. And once that is broken, you'll see Premier League clubs going for 6 and 7 billion. So why, if you're sat in your office at Tottenham Hotspur House or whatever it's called, Bill Nicholson in Ormo Dome, whatever it's called, would you sell the club now when the value of these football clubs is still extraordinarily, and in the teeth of the economic situation in the world, about to go up by another 30 or 40%? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audience. Still near over 2,000 of you watching us live. So again, thank you so much for all of your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. An easy segment to try and end it on. God knows where this is going to go now. What constitutes a successful season for Tottenham? Now, I promised Danny we'd be done by 10. That's in 7 minutes time here for our listeners on audio. We're going to try our best to rattle through this, Danny. That's okay with you?
Let's do that.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. Top man, right, okay. I dread to think this is going to go. I'm going to steer the show over to Richard Cracknell. God knows this might go. Crackers, let's kickstart back with you. God help us.
Successful, I said on the show, it's quite simple, Rick. I said after a couple of shows back, a successful season is where you actually quite look forward to going to watch Spurs, where you would consider not going to watch David Bowie in concert because Spurs will be playing that afternoon and they're playing a brand of football. So at the moment, we're such on our uppers with the kicking of style that we've had from Jose Mourinho, from Stellini, from the man that was going to make us so proud, from Conte and throwing his toys out the pram. All of that has just given us such a low bar to get over that I think the first time that we see Bentancur or Kulusevski nutmeg a player and maybe pirouette round another one and go down the wing with some purpose and belief and put a ball across that gets met and put into the goal, to quote a Danny Kelly and a Danny Bakerism, it will be like taking new shoes off. And that's successful for me. That will be success. If we end up completely in the same league position as this year, but we've actually played some football that you can watch, that you can stay up and watch match of the day for once. I mean, we've all been in bed by 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, haven't we, for 4 years? Because there's match of the day.
I'll tell you what, speak for yourself, son. I've been out, mate, partying it up.
Honestly, just some
look at how your crackers look, Starling. Really good.
Ricky Norwood's still been in makeup at that time.
I just want front foot football, Rick. That's all I want. I want something to hang my hat on. And do you know what? If you get that and if you get the crowd behind you and some football, guess what? The results follow. That's all I want to see. And I want to see a manager talking about us and we and feeling it. I just want to see some feels. That's all I want for the season. That will be successful.
Not too much in cracks.
No, it's not a lot though, is it? It's not a lot. I'm not demanding we go and spend 60 million on this one, or we must make this cup final, or we must make this competition. Just something for your 50, 60, 70 quid that you can come away from and go, okay, didn't go our way today, but okay, I see what we were trying to do. I saw them actually trying to do something. I'd take that. It might not be for everybody, but for me personally, that's where I am with it.
Brilliant.
Agree. Rix, let's come over to you. It's fair to say the bar has been set quite low now, given the nature of what the last few years has served up. So, Rick, for you, what is an acceptable level of a successful season ahead of Ange Postecoglou's first season in charge at Tottenham? Be lucky if he gets a second one on our basis at the moment.
I mean, very much like what Cracker said there. I want to look forward to watching them. I want to look forward to going there. I want to look forward to competing again. I want to have that faith and belief that we can go out there and beat every team in front of us. Nah, it's not going to happen. And, you know, every time that I predict a scoreline, I never predict us to lose because I can't do it. But I want us to go out there and have that kind of feel, have that belief that we're going to go out there and do it. And I'd love to know from Danny, how far away do you think that we are from looking like the proper Tottenham again?
As I said at the start of all this, I think you can solve the defensive issues pretty quickly. And if we hang on to Kane, and that's a separate issue that I'm so glad we've skirted around and avoided, we've got enough firepower in the team to win a lot of football matches. So if it was the opposite way round, if we'd finished last season having conceded very few goals, but we're struggling to score goals, because that, in the end, struggling to score goals is what hamstrings teams and makes them get relegated in the end. Where the team is the squad in its imbalance is at least imbalanced in the right way. They've got some talented forward-looking players. They include Pedro Porro in that, by the way, who I wouldn't sell to Barcelona, whoever's after him, for £1 million. That combination of athleticism and an eye for a goal and a pass that he has, I don't care if he can't defend. That's the coach's job. There's 11 of them out there defending. You can make up for that. But that combination of qualities that I think I've seen in him, they are very hard to get into football clubs these days. And of course, the reason why, Spurs were the only team in for him was that he can't defend. All right, you defend other ways. Brazil played 2 fullbacks up with the corner flags, but they played 2 defensive midfielders in front of them. There are solutions to all these things. You make your other fullback, sorry, Destiny Adoji, stay back in his own half. So you transfer to a 3 when you've got the ball. So, I don't think they're a million miles away. They're a million miles away from Manchester City. Let's not kid ourselves. We may have been watching the best British club side ever in the last 12 months, but they too are having a rotation of their prime players. And who knows, Haaland might only score 50 goals this season. We'll see. Look, I'm being optimistic because I don't want to end this in a bleak note, and I think you're right. I think you're both right. If we can keep watching them, then that would be it. I'll just jump in here because we're running out of time, I know. I'll just say for me, it's the same thing, but it's very personal. And that is, I know Spurs' have shortcomings. I know they should be working on them. I hope they do work on them. I also know they're standing in the world. They're a great club with a lot of supporters, most of whom have been passed down generation to generation to believe in attacking football, to believe in that beautiful white shirt, playing dynamic, we say front football, these attacking football where they support each other and play as a team. It allows you to get past the lack of obvious success, trophies, to say, I support a team that is brilliant and unique in what it's trying to do. And that goes a very, very long way. And if I could sit down of an evening, so think to myself, well, at least the team you support has got a lot of things that's unique about it. They've got the great stadium, all the rest of it, but their team is united and is trying to win the games by attacking the opposition. That would make me very happy. And if I thought that there were other Spurs fans, 13-year-olds and 90-year-olds who are feeling the same thing as well, that would also give me a great deal of pleasure. It's got to be done, but I think it's doable.
Amen. Before we give Danny an opportunity to tell us where we can find all the great work he does, Lee and Jace will come to you very quickly. Jace, for you, I'm sure one of the key things will be you want to see Spurs, I think as Danny alluded to earlier, take these domestic cups seriously, right, Jace?
Yeah, we all want that attacking football. I think the club does need the monkey off its back regarding a trophy, but I genuinely think that Tottenham will be a lot closer towards things next season, league-wise, than other people. I think that no European football will give us a massive boost to be able to go to Sheffield United with a proper side without the distractions of thinking, oh, but we got Champions League next week. So without the travel plans and without the disruption injury-wise, that we had a horrific injury list this season. We had, I think it was 16 players missed at least a month of the season. In the case of Hugo, he did it twice. So when I'm talking about 16 separate injuries cost the players to miss at least a month of a season. You look at the fall off after Bentancur missed. Bentancur's missed, and he'll miss a big chunk next year. Richarlison had 4 injuries this year. We've ended the season, even Eric Dyer, or whatever people think, out for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, Sonny had the fractured cheekbone, didn't he? Missed a big part of the season. So I think next year with fewer games, I think their fitness levels or those types of injuries won't be as much. Other teams will be. Like I say, the teams that we've finished below this year, the Villas, Brightons, they've got to embrace Europe because it's massive for them. It's not it's only the Europa League. And I think, and bear in mind, 5 clubs get Champions League football next year. I genuinely think Tottenham, there is no reason why we can't make Champions League. We are not a million miles away. As Danny said, we conceded 62 goals and still had a positive goal difference. And Sonny was no real impact on the season last year. We've since found out that he had a terrible injury that he was playing through last year. So, Kulusevski didn't have anywhere near the impact. He was another one that missed a big month of the season. That's a massive. Romero missed a lot of the season early in the first part, didn't he? With the abductor injuries and things like that. So I genuinely believe Tottenham can, if we score 70 goals next year, but can drop down to 45 conceded. That's a lot more points on the board than we got this year. And without European football, I think that's a big advantage as well. So I think the lowest Tottenham will be is 5th, and 5th will be Champions League football. That's not to say I think we can win the league, and I just want that. But I think we'll get much more of a season than we want, and we will have a real go at a domestic trophy. But if you play Manchester City in the final or a semi-final, it's hard. You can't guarantee it.
No, keep us level as always. Lee.
Hopefully we'll play them before the final, Jace, because we normally turn Man City over at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
But you're going to have to beat, aren't you? Even if you knock City out, you will have to beat a Liverpool or a Chelsea or an Arsenal, and you're going to have to beat at least 2 of them to win a trophy.
But I think 12 of the top 20 richest clubs in the world are in one league. It's a very, very difficult country to win trophies in.
I think that's what makes it fascinating, doesn't it? In terms of, especially when you come to the domestic trophies, there's only 2 that you can win. Obviously, outside of the league, you've got the FA Cup takes you 7 games to win it, and the League Cup takes you 6 games. I think it might be 7 games as well now because we're out of Europe, so we've got an extra game, don't we? So when you look at it on paper like that, you think, well, hang on a minute, we can win 7 games, no problem. It doesn't ever work out like that. Look, the 12 years of data, and I talk about data, and JC, you've been talking about stats as well. 71 points over the last 12 years gets you 4th, right? Average 71 points. So you've got to start looking at it from a points perspective. Forget what everyone else is doing. This is the issue that we've had. Maybe not necessarily the players or the manager. Maybe it is, I don't know. But you've got to worry about yourselves getting the points total. You ain't got to worry about what Arsenal are doing or what West Ham are doing or what Chelsea. It's very, very difficult to do, as we alluded to earlier. But 65 points over the last 12 years gets you 5th. And as Jason's just said, 5th place this season gets you Champions League football. So, our average finishing position in the Premier League since it started 32 years is 5th. Right, with the 6th most trophies won. So people say we don't win trophies, but there's 6. That is kind of our level. So my expectations is to get back to where our level is at least, which is top 5, win cups, and play good football. And there's no reason. Yes, you come up against a Liverpool, but yes, you can come up against a Man City or Arsenal, but they can come up against us if we're on a roll when that semi-final rocks round at the FA Cup and the team that we're playing is in the Champions League. And they got a game in the Champions League. Then they got the FA Cup semi against us. Then they got the Champions League. We got no Europe. That gives us an advantage as well. So you can't predict that, but all we really want is to go and see good football and give it a go. If you're going to give it a go, you may as well give it a go, ain't you? What is the point in not giving it a go? Rolling over against AC Milan, they're like 0-0. Like, what is the point?
Defenders, absolutely.
Exactly. You may as well just go and give it a go and say, do you know what? At least I had a go. At least I tried. And that's what I personally want to see at Tottenham. You need my season ticket, and it was hard work to do, Rick, but I did it. And I'm looking forward again now. Like, I've been way too negative for my personality this last season. I've been positive. I think we will finish in the top 5. I actually think we'll finish top 4, but I think we will finish in the top 5. And I think we will win a cup. We've got a chance. We've got every chance. I think the no Europe thing is massive. It's a massive reset for this football club.
Huge.
I don't not want to be in Europe. I'm not saying that I don't want to be in it. I wanted to be in it, but I think now we're not in it. I think it will benefit us, and let's play to our advantage on that.
Danny, it feels only right to close the show with you. It's been a fascinating hour and a half. I do apologise. We have taken you over time. These guys will know that I never ever stick to times on this show, as Crackers, Jason, Ricks, and Lee will definitely allude to. But it's been fascinating.
If you think it's okay just for public entertainment, but my cats are unfed, that's it's your view. That is your view.
It's been far worse.
A lot of people who wouldn't go along with it. Just saying.
I would say it's been far worse than I was affected on Last Word On Spurs, I tell you. But that makes no ambiguous anyway. But Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Listen,
it's been an absolute joy with all of you. Thank you very much indeed for asking me.
Thank you.
No, honestly,
thanks, Danny. You're a legend, mate. Thank you so much.
It's been a real honour to have you on Last Word On Spurs. Although, like we said, jokingly off air, take about 6 months to arrange it. Danny, for those I can't believe that don't know where to find View from the Lane, talkSPORT for what you do, where can they find the wonderful insight you give on Tottenham, and also not just Tottenham, just in general football as well?
Listen, I pop up. I'm a sort of first sub at talkSPORT these days because I chose to come and live in the Republic of Ireland. Thanks to modern technology, I can still broadcast to the world, which is great. You can always catch me on Sunday night on Trans Europe Express, perhaps the most varied programme about football on any radio station, where yesterday we did 20 minutes on who have been the most successful one-armed footballers in history. And it was serious and it was real. Hello, Jimmy Hasty. And that's Sunday nights on talkSPORT, but I'm often on Monday evenings as well. The View from the Lane, which I took up, they asked me to help with it 18 months ago, partially to try and stop people like yourselves crushing all before you. It's available from all the usual podcast outputs. And we've now just started a Twitter feed in which I put pictures of myself wearing strange hats. And that's
we loved that earlier.
VFTL Podcast. You can find me. But as I say, when I came on here, I think that the world of Spurs is a huge universe and there's a lot of space for the good content, like what you lot put on here. The bad stuff will fall by the wayside. That is the nature of the game. I want to thank you again for asking me on that, because I've had a ball, and that's all I ever ask of anything, including Spurs. Make it enjoyable.
We've tried to limit the Spurs chat as best we can do, but I must say, look, from the wonderful team here, from the wonderful Ricky J. Norwood, Ricks, thank you so much, my man. Been a pleasure. Looking forward to pre-season.
Oh, mate, listen, it's been such an honour and a pleasure to be on this show. It's been, I've just loved listening to you, Danny. Seriously, it's been fantastic. And in person and not just in the bloody well gym. Do you know what I mean? And so you guys...
There's that Lycra image again. Thanks.
I just wanted to leave it with you. I didn't want you to go and sleep without it, Danny. Do you know what I mean?
I'm going to be creating it in AI very soon, obviously.
and also, don't you worry, Jace. I've been using Adama Traore's baby oil to get this tan on, and I'll send you a bottle, brother. So don't you worry, all right?
Yeah,
but always an honour and always a pleasure, mate.
I'm not sure the Guns are quite in the same league, though, Ricky, but you know.
Pleasure. Ricks, thank you so much, bud. You're back with us during pre-season. Cracks. Oh, Cracks, my man. Thank you so much, mate. Honestly, always a pleasure, Cracks.
No, thank you, Rick, for allowing me to come on with all of you once again, and of course with Danny Kelly, and just to let everybody know that when Marconi legged it down the patent office and invented radio, it was for the 5 minutes of Danny Kelly and Danny Baker speaking to a man called Gordon about his wooden bow tie. So please head over to YouTube and just type in Gordon's wooden bow tie. Sit back and listen to it in glorious medium wave, because it is the greatest 5 to 10 minutes of radio and a phone-in that you will ever hear. I must have heard it 1,000 times and still laugh like a drain every time.
When I was there, Rick, it still makes me burst out laughing. I don't know what's coming, you know.
It's magnificent, absolutely magnificent.
I'm still tittering, you know.
Brilliant.
Rich, thank you so much. Very quickly, Rich has still got to Danny Rose available for that evening night. Please go and check out Richie's Twitter. He'll have all the details on there. Jace, thank you so much, my man. Looking forward to Bangkok. Ty?
I can't wait to go back out there, but more importantly, mate, it's hurry up, 11 o'clock, Wednesday, the cricket's on. Second National Test match. And by then, I hope Ricky Norwood has got rid of some of that permatan, I tell you. I'm going to send him up to Iceland for 3 weeks to get rid of it.
Jace, thank you so much. Lee, thank you, mate. Incredible show. What a show. Incredible.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. You've done it again, mate. Danny's an absolute legend. So much love in the comments, Danny, for you and for everyone, for the whole panel, to be fair. So it's just been brilliant to be back on, actually. Felt like it's been a while, actually, since I've been back on, to get the dulcet tones back out. There's a few requests for me to play out the old didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo?
I don't know. I've got it here. I might get it out, boys. What do you reckon?
Oh, my God.
He's not going to get
what a way to go out.
Go for it. There we go.
Welcome, Ange.
I think for the Lee McQueen sending us out. Danny Kelly, Danny, thank you so much, guys. We have been the Last Word On Spurs.
We'll be back very soon as well, and watched as well. You know, that's a task.
Honestly, thank you so much. All of us here, we've been the Last Word On Spurs. Please keep